When it occurred, the morning sun had just begun to paint Rosemont Ridge's immaculately mowed lawns with that sickly golden tint that only seen in gated communities or horror films starring Stepford wives. A rap, not a courteous knock, not a hey, I made banana bread kind of neighborly knock. No, the knock was this, the kind that makes your coffee go cold before you even pick it up and makes your stomach turn. When I heard it, I was halfway through my first cup, which was bitter, black, and powerful enough to rouse the dead. Additionally, unexpected knocks before 8 a.m. were never good news in this neighborhood. Packages lost on Amazon. Perhaps. Is Buttons, a wayward poodle, dotty in the loose. Perhaps. But let's face it, it was Clarissa 9 times out of 10. HOA President Clarissa Langford, the horror of Tuesdays and the destroyer of happiness. A woman who likely ironed her, throw cushions, and wore beige like a weapon, with a sigh akin to that of a woman twice my age. I put down my mug and opened the door, and, sure enough, she was there. The clipboard gripped her chest as if it contained the nuclear codes. Her lips were so tightly packed that I thought she had lost them. Yet that arrogant look that said, "I haven't even begun yet, and I've already ruined your morning. We must speak," she stated. That falsely charming voice that caused your molars to hurt. When she banned inflatable pool toys for violating the neighborhood's aesthetic integrity, she used the same tone. It was everything she could do not to slam the door in her face. Instead, I made the best I'm listening, but also imagining you tripping on your orthopedic wedge's face I could manage while leaning nonchalantly against the doorframe. It's just 7:15, Claria, unless someone passed away or the HOA caught fire on its own. Can this wait? She clearly disregarded me. Clarissa wasn't made to handle sarcasm or simple civility. She simply thrust a folded letter at me as if it were a subpoena, as if preparing for a one-woman courtroom performance. She said, "Your brother is in violation of HOA policy. If this keeps up, there will be repercussions. The way Disney villains say fool," she said. Consequences. Too dramatic, scary, and heavy for someone in linen culottes standing on a driveway. Even though I hadn't yet opened the letter, I was aware that I had a gut feeling that this would be positive. The problem was my brother, Caleb. He was, of course, recently home from combat, still getting used to civilian life, and seemingly the new public enemy #1 in the area. Yes, it was there when I unfolded the letter. I nearly choked on my spit when typing in that antiseptic HOA font, which is serif-heavy, joyless, and most likely similar to Regulation Gothic. Mr. Caleb Bennett has been seen in the neighborhood wearing unapproved clothing, particularly military camouflage, which throws off the aesthetic balance and could be interpreted as menacing by other locals. I blinked, read it again, and then laughed so hard I almost cut my tongue. I looked up at her and asked, "Let me clarify. You're criticizing a veteran for wearing camouflage in his own front yard." Her face remained unchanged. Her Botox prevented it. She angrily retorted, "It's about preserving Rosemont Ridge's neutral aesthetic, not about him." She stated that as if she were quoting the Constitution, and I swear to God. Already sensing the onset of a tension migraine, I squeezed the bridge of my nose. I asked, "Clarissa, are you even aware of what my brother has accomplished for our nation?" She declared, "I don't care if he's the mayor or a war hero. Rules are rules." Caleb entered the kitchen behind me at that very time, holding a mug and maintaining a neutral demeanor. He had also heard it in a megachurch. Her voice sounded like gospel. He took the paper, silently read it, and then silently returned it. "They don't like that I'm wearing camouflage," I remarked. "They believe it to be disruptive and not visually harmonious." Slowly, he nodded. "All right. Is that all? Okay," I inquired. A gleam of mischief appeared in those piercing eyes as he grinned. "Oh, this is going to be enjoyable." To check the mail the following morning, he left the house in full uniform, complete with boots, a tactical vest, a beret, and everything. Like prairie dogs in the suburbs, neighbors peered through blinds. Miss S. Eccles screamed when she dropped her hose. Clarissa almost suffered a stroke after dropping her phone. with her eyes full of fury and her hair sprayed into submission. She marched across the street. She growled. "This is an escalation." Turning to salute her, Caleb said, "I thought we were enforcing dress codes. It's not amusing. Dress code violations are a national crisis," he stated gravely. To fend off evil, she raised her phone like a cross. "I'm recording this," he grinned and said. "Make sure to get my good side." And I almost broke down on the porch. Later that evening, a formal letter was received. This time, there was no warning. Oh no, there were legal threats and HOA sanctimony involved. They were becoming worse, which could only mean one thing. He was, too. He appeared in his dress blues at the community meeting the following day. Clarissa appeared to have had battery acid added to her lemon drink. She attempted to counter. But Caleb was ready. Displayed a video showing a federal law that shields active military members from housing discrimination, including HOA enforcement focusing on military dress. Then pulled out his phone. Clarissa winced as if it were physically painful. The room abruptly turned when one board member attempted to speak and another questioned the fine. Guess who held the lightning rod? It was like an uncontrollable hurricane. Caleb grinned. Slowly and perilously, he remarked, "You know, military lawyers don't like this kind of thing." Then he revealed the actual bomb. "I've also heard that there are some creative line items in your HOA budget. Keep quiet." A board member suffocated on their water bottle. After Clarissa turned pale, the meeting abruptly ended. No penalties, no additional action. All that was simmering beneath Clarissa's tight smile was complete, unmitigated hatred. We believed that to be the case. We were mistaken. Since Clarissa hadn't finished yet, you would assume that after being shut down in her own realm, Clarissa would quietly withdraw, perhaps think things over, perhaps mature, perhaps practice yoga and learn how to relax her jaw. Yes, no. Like an inebriated poker player with a lost hand and a grudge, she doubled down. Because that's what individuals like Clarissa do. They escalate. They don't learn. After just 2 days of calm, the flyers began to appear, the same serif-heavy HOA font that shouts, "I have no joy," is printed on cream-colored cardstock. Title, "Preserving Rosemont Ridge's Soul." Subtext, "Let's ensure that no one perceives bravery, boots, thought or badges as threats." It was a passive-aggressive love letter to uniformity from Clarissa. The classic, "Don't be like Caleb" public service announcement, disguised as community service. Then she did what no rational person would ever do. She caught him off guard at the supermarket. Caleb enjoys structure. You see, his mornings are clockwork even in civilian life. He gets up at 600, works out, takes a shower, goes to the grocery store for eggs, makes black coffee, and cooks whatever else he chooses to make that week with unnerving accuracy. His camo joggers, aviator sunglasses, and that calm confidence that comes from surviving things most of us can't even pronounce were all he was wearing as he strolled into Martin's Market. And why is she in the produce department, examining cantaloupes as if she were judging a pie contest at a fair from the 1950s? Yes, Clarissa Langford, looking like a windbreaker. Although I wasn't present, our neighbor Chris, a legend by the way, live streamed the entire event as if it were a pay-per-view bout, so I was able to get the play-by-play. Clarissa demanded that Caleb stop causing distress in community spaces by advancing on him like she controlled the vegetable department. When she said that, he was holding a watermelon, simply, with a cantaloupe in hand. After examining it and her, he said, and I quote, "Madam, compared to you, this cantaloupe has seen more action." At that point, she dialed security at Martin's. When security arrived, they first examined Caleb before examining the patch on his sleeve. You might be surprised to learn that one of them has also served. The next moment, 2 security officers salute my brother as if he were going to lead them into battle with a shopping cart. And Clarissa is furiously yelling in aisle 4. She left without anything, and most likely considered bringing organic brown free-range grade as into our home. When Caleb got home that evening, He threw the cantaloupe on the counter as if it were a trophy. He remarked, "You won't believe this." I smiled and said, "Oh, I already do. Clarissa is currently tagging city officials on Facebook and calling for a military ban in supermarkets." He chuckled, but it was worn out. This was becoming ludicrous, even for him. The letter then arrived, 5 pages lengthy and jam-packed with legalese, so thick it likely needed its own zip code. The official warning. They truly used the HOA vocabulary on this one, threatening penalties, liens, and other legal action. The portion where they accused him of deliberately provoking emotional discomfort in a shared residential environment was the only part I could read aloud without snorting. "Are you okay?" After he read it aloud a second time in silence, I asked. "Calm as a monk in a sandstorm," he remarked. "Better than good." "They're panicking." Then he produced a folder of files, an actual manila folder with photographs, documents, and wait a minute, a copy of the HOA's financial ledger. "How did you obtain this?" I muttered, already ecstatic. "Public records and a very amiable accountant named Jerome who despises Clarissa more than stale yogurt," he continued. It turns out that Clarissa had been using HOA funds for highly prohibited activities, including extravagant lunches on the HOA card, personal landscaping on her private property, and an enigmatic $4.200 in consultation fees to an imaginary company. The worst part is that she paid for a private security camera system with Rosemont funds for her personal backyard. "Oh, we're going full Watergate now, not just battling the dress code." Caleb grinned. "Naturally, we prepared our next course of action, and by we, I mean that I popped some popcorn and Caleb got meticulous. He contacted a military attorney with expertise in housing discrimination. Additionally, he submitted an official complaint to the State Housing Commission. He also casually brought up the money irregularities with a local investigative reporter who owed him a favor from his deployment days. Just for kicks, I observed him using a whiteboard and color-coded tabs as if he were putting together a tactical strike team. Clarissa was going to receive a war, complete with opening credits and dramatic music, if she so desired. Caleb arrived at the very next HOA meeting wearing a clean button-down shirt and a copy of the Point Us Constitution. He was not wearing a uniform or camouflage, with a code beneath his arm, as if overseeing the Salem witch trials. Clarissa was already seated at the head of the table, from the other side of the room. Susan, her sidekick, who I believe believes that independent thought is a contagious illness, was staring at us with a glare. Caleb remained silent. He simply distributed packets, grinned, and bided his time. The board members were looking over copies of those incredibly imaginative expenses. 5 minutes later, Clarissa became silent, which was a warning sign in and of itself. Susan made an attempt to change the subject, saying, "Community safety is more important than money," when she reached the line item about custom pergola construction, which cost $3. And oddly matched Clarissa's backyard Instagram photo. Even she was unable to conjure the same enthusiasm. When Caleb finally got up to say, "I simply believe that our community needs openness, don't you?" A complete rebellion was just one loose floorboard away from happening in the room. Clarissa demanded that Caleb be censured by a vote. It was a 4-1 failure. Susan paused as well, blinking as if her spirit had just been reset. As he turned to go, Caleb gave her a firm touch on the manila folder, met her gaze, and murmured, "This is only the condensed version, so don't worry." I discovered him sipping a beer on the patio that evening while gazing up at the stars as if they were owing him something. "You believe that to be it?" I inquired. "No," he responded. "She's not even close to being done, but she's about to dig her own grave, and I'm just going to hand her the shovel," he said after taking a big gulp. And boy, did she begin to dig. Have you ever witnessed someone attempting to win a battle they have already lost? Clarissa was that person, just utterly dedicated to losing stylishly, because any reasonable individual would have discreetly retreated after the HOA meeting debacle. perhaps pretended to have a personal emergency, relocated to Boca Raton, and started over. However, Clarissa opted for violence through rumors, flyers, and what I can only characterize as tactical pettiness. Like most passive-aggressive meltdowns, it began modestly. Some strangely detailed memoranda went out, such as discouragement of militaristic displays that could cause unease and reminders to maintain traditional attire in public-facing areas. As in, what? Should Caleb have apologized for being here now? Then came the bombardment of emails signed warmly. Clarissa Langford, HOA president elected for third consecutive term, including strong language and legalese light threats. I'm not sure who needed the reminder, but all right. Queen, show off the votes cast by Doug, a dentist, and 17 retired couples. Caleb approached each one with the same level of composure he applied when he watched weather updates in conflict areas. Then, not with the subject line, "New episode just dropped." He would coolly forward them to his State Housing Commission contact. However, the problem with individuals like Clarissa is they cannot simply lose. Even if it's a consolation prize crafted out of desperation and illusion, they must win something. Thus, she changed her strategy. Sabotage. In particular, his 4th of July BBQ. This barbecue was more than just a simple grill and chill. This was the occasion. Cornhole burgers, coolers stocked with every soda imaginable, sparklers for the children, and an unapologetic music that spanned from Johnny Cash to Beyoncé. It was customary, a gesture of goodwill toward the community, and a means for Caleb to demonstrate his ability to cook delicious pulled pork despite his military experience. However, Clarissa perceived it as a challenge to her HOA kingdom. Oh, dear July dictator. What then did she do? She attempted to turn it off, filed a complaint about loudness 2 days beforehand, cited firework hazards, despite the fact that Caleb's proprietary chili rub was the only explosive item in the yard. Then, get this, she posted placards in the area stating that the barbecue was in violation of Article 7.3.4, community event hosting protocols and unauthorized. Instead of serving brisket to seniors, she gave the impression that he was starting an underground rave. Caleb was taping a laminated copy of the actual HOA regulations to a folding table as I entered the kitchen that morning, with coffee in hand. "What are you doing?" I inquired. He raised his head, serene as ever. "Just providing the people with what they desire. Are you going to let her shut it down?" I smiled. "Not a chance," he said, tying on an apron that read Grill Sergeant. "And did anybody actually show up?" More than ever before, neighbors who hadn't spoken for years produced 6 packs and potato salad. Even the quiet couple from Lot 17 brought a key lime pie and their strange schnauzer. Smoke, laughing, and the stench of utter disobedience filled the air. Then, the eagle arrived. Indeed, a real eagle. Well, it wasn't a real one, but a man in an eagle costume, complete with wingspan, did an oddly motivational interpretive dance to God Bless the USA. I came up with that section, and I will accept the standing ovation. Many thanks. Halfway into the celebration, Clarissa appeared, accompanied by Susan and 2 thugs with clipboards. Her jaw was clenched so tightly that I was afraid her veneers could break as she stood at the edge of the yard. "I'm recording this," she growled. I remarked. "You keep saying that, but all you have is a folder with pictures of lawn chairs and hot dogs." Once more, she attempted to argue with Caleb, claimed that aesthetic cohesion was broken by the tragedy. Simply grinning, he offered her a hamburger and informed her that the fire inspector had already given his OK Caleb called him that morning to ensure that all fire codes, crowd limits, and trash cans were followed, because adhering to the proper regulations is the one thing a soldier is skilled at. Despite her setback, Clarissa didn't stop there. No. We were struck with the lawsuit 2 days later. Yes, because Caleb was creating a hostile neighborhood environment. She really attempted to sue him, filed it in small claims court, most likely over a glass of rose and chanting old HOA curses. However, this is where the deliciousness began. She not only lacked a legal defense, but she also unintentionally started an audit. After silently observing everything, those letters, the financials, The numerous complaints the Housing Commission determined it was time to step in. Clarissa received a genuine subpoena at her door, provided by a process server with a smile and a "Don't Tread on Me" t-shirt. Chris claimed that his cat didn't come out from under the bed for 3 hours because she cried so loudly. I see what you're thinking now. Certainly she gives up now. However, Clarissa was a devout follower of the sunk cost fallacy. She attempted to mobilize the troops, called an emergency HOA meeting. However, the board was mostly finished. Henderson was organizing a cruise. Rodriguez had begun to meditate. And even Susan had ceased responding to her emails. At the head of the table, Clarissa sat by herself and read the regulations as if they were the Dead Sea Scrolls. And nobody arrived, not even the dentist Doug. In the meantime, Caleb was preparing for the impending court appearance with the help of a lawyer named Dana, who was razor sharp, a former JAG, and fearsome in heels. And during the peaceful evening hours on the veranda, sipping beer, he would gaze across the street at Clarissa's residence and utter, "She is no longer attempting to win. She is merely attempting to outlive him," I said, nodding. "But she won't." He sipped his drink, slowly. "No, she refuses to," and we were correct, since her spending patterns weren't the only reason for the subpoena. Additionally, it imported old emails demonstrating that she had advised other board members to target Caleb specifically. Phrases like military imagery disturbs neighborhood tranquility and undesirable optics were used. Yes, the type of things that put you in violation of the legislation against discrimination. And as soon as Dana received those emails, everything was altered. Just to put it simply, when the time came and Clarissa's paper-thin empire began to fall apart due to her own inflated ego and embezzled HOA cash, it wasn't as dramatic as in the films. No slow clap, no gavel bang, no sermon about you can't handle the truth. No, it was clinical, silent, and truthful. Somewhat. Lovely. You see, courtrooms are amusing settings. You anticipate pyrotechnics. But instead you typically get hard benches, fluorescent lighting, and the sound of a phone ringing at the most inconvenient moment. However, that day, there was a distinct taste of divine justice that day. When Caleb arrived in his Class A dress uniform, he looked so sharp that a Marine would have shed a tear. I was seated behind him, with Chris, our favorite nosy neighbor, on one side and Dana on the other. Chris had taken the day off work for community interest. Susan, still faithful, bless her naive heart, and a lawyer she obviously found on a bargain website accompanied Clarissa as she entered. The individual appeared to have mixed parking ticket issues with HOA law, which, fairly speaking, was all he was capable of managing. The judge, an elderly woman, with a countenance that seemed like she had witnessed every ridiculous legal ploy in history, was only 2 poor arguments away from permanently prohibiting HOA lawsuits. She listened to Clarissa's attorney babble on about psychological distress caused by militant appearances and community standards. Caleb simply sat with his hands folded in his lap as if he were awaiting a weather report, serene and quiet. Next was Dana's turn, and the thunder was brought by that woman. My God. She didn't speak louder, didn't grandstand or strut. She simply submitted email after email with composure, financial documents, neighborly testimonies, a copy of the federal housing statute that specifically shields active duty military personnel from discrimination by homeowners associations. Clarissa began to perspire, as in clearly. Her attorney attempted to challenge an email that she sent herself. "Counsel, your client CC'd half the neighborhood. It's public knowledge," Dana remarked, raising an eyebrow. The judge laughed. I laughed. Everyone. Clarissa was sitting there after everything was ended, as if she had just discovered that the Titanic wasn't unsinkable. After examining her spectacles, the judge remarked, "Miss Langford, your actions may amount to discriminatory harassment and abuse of HOA authority, in addition to the fact that this lawsuit is without basis." It was a horrible idea for Clarissa to try to interrupt. "Ma'am, you will be escorted out if you speak out of turn again," the judge yelled. Clarissa stopped talking so quickly that I worried she would lose it. Decision. Case dismissed. HOA fines. Clarissa received a personal citation for unethical behavior. The icing on the cake was that the court sent the case to the state attorney general's office for possible financial wrongdoing inquiry. Play, set, match. We didn't have a party at home. Not just yet. We didn't have to. The word spread more quickly than Clarissa's subsequent tantrum. She left the HOA for personal reasons within a week. Susan, who cited an increasingly toxic environment, followed 2 days later. Within a month, they both discreetly moved out. Clarissa sent a final neighborhood-wide email that resembled a narcissist breakup letter. But she didn't even wave goodbye. I've always just had Rosemont Ridge's best interests in mind. But it appears the neighborhood values turmoil over order. I say goodbye to all of you. I framed it, printed it, and put it next to Caleb's bronze star in the garage. It seemed appropriate. The new board of the HOA, much more at ease, to ensure that something similar never occurs again. They even requested Caleb to assist in revising some of the bylaws. He graciously rejected, saying that if it's okay with everyone, he'd prefer to live in peace and grill in camouflage. We had another BBQ that fall, greater than the previous one. There were no eagles, no placards, or protests, but someone did send a bald eagle balloon, which felt like character development. The neighbors came food, stories, and their children. Additionally, it truly felt like a community for the first time in a long time. Not only a rule book with a zip code. As he narrated the court case to a group of kids who believed he was essentially Captain America, Caleb stood by the grill, apron on, spatula in hand, chuckling. I bent down and muttered, "Did you ever imagine it would get this far?" he said, flipping a burger. I was aware that she would overplay her hand. All I needed to do was wait until she choked on the cards. Each of us took a taste of our beer. As the sun sank, everything took on a golden glow that makes even homeowners associations seem like paradise. Additionally, for the first time in what seemed like forever, Rosemont Ridge was at peace. There will always be another Clarissa, of course, somewhere, waiting with a superiority complex and a clipboard. But for the time being, we had prevailed, using statutes, stakes, and a great deal of irony. That's the tale of the brother they believed they could destroy, yet neglected that he had previously endured more and was fully aware of how to win. Lawn chair by lawn chair. Occasionally, the quiet conflicts we engage in within our local communities reveal more about our strength than the big conflicts waged outside. Standing your ground doesn't always mean rushing forward. It can also mean arriving composedly, holding the truth in your hands, and speaking with respect. Being unashamedly yourself, even when it causes inconvenience to others, is a revolutionary act in a society that is fixated on control and appearances. Perhaps the greatest victory of all isn't disproving them, knowing that you didn't have to emulate them in order to accomplish it correctly. Therefore, enjoy where you live, wear what you've earned, and don't allow tiny minds break your spirit, since calm is the presence of bravery more than the absence of noise, even if it takes the shape of a barbecue in the backyard.